What's up, interpreters? I'm Howard Aprill with Ware Nature Center in Milwaukee County Parks.
What is up, interpreters? I am Paul Caputo, NAI's Executive Director.
What's up, interpreter? This is Heather Manier, your Corporate Engagement and Partnerships Manager. Welcome, Howard. It's nice to see you. And I want to thank you for your service. I know you were in the military for some time, so just always like to say thank you to our veterans.
Thank you. Retired, long
Retired veteran.
but
yes.
But thank you.
Yeah. So Paul knows you way better than I know you. So if you don't mind, just if you could tell me kind of what role you have right now and what you do in your role.
Sure. Well, I have one of the best jobs in the world. My official title is Park Naturalist. And as I mentioned, I'm with Ware Nature Center, Milwaukee County Parks. And I have one of the best jobs in the world because I feel like I get to help meet people where they're at and help connect them to the world that we live in. And specifically, I do that. I do environmental education and interpretation. I do that for all ages, pre-K, grade school, high school, college. I do adult programs, family programs, senior programs. And so there's the educational component of what I do. But then I'm very lucky and I get to work with our animal ambassadors at Ware Nature Center. So we have a number of live critters that go out into the community and represent their species and introduce kids to what they have in their own backyard. So it's a little bit of everything. So I have one of the best jobs in the world.
Well, and you've been doing that best job in the world, or at least you've been working at the Ware Nature Center for almost 3 decades. Started there in 1996. It's amazing to see that kind of longevity. What are the most significant changes you can point to? And I mean this on like the sort of biggest scale. It could be changes to the site itself because of, say, climate change, or it could be changes to the field of interpretation, or it could be changes in the kind of visitors who you receive. What are the biggest differences between your job now and your job 28 years ago?
Well, at first blush, I would have to say the role of technology, at least in the day-to-day stuff. One of the things that people don't realize when they're first starting out is the importance of being a lifelong learner. And when I graduated from college in 1992, I felt I was pretty hot on myself, and I'm like, all right, I'm all armed to go be a naturalist somewhere. And I really realized that college was the easy part. The hard part is being a lifelong learner. And what I mean by that is social media, graphic design. I didn't think I would be involved in any of that. What's going to be on our Instagram post? What's going to be on Facebook? That wasn't even science fiction. So I guess one of the biggest things certainly has been technology, but in a lot of ways, most things are actually kind of the same. And I know that some of your listeners right now are like, what are you talking about? It's a completely different world from 96 to present day.
Our listeners are very angry. There's a lot of like angry letters and what are you talking about? So yeah, your invitation is spot on.
Oh, they're coming. I'm sure the comments are coming. But as I learned from one of my coworkers, she said, it's really important to meet people where they're at. And I don't think that's different now than it was when I started here in 96 or when I worked for the DNR in 94. You want to meet people where they're at and not sound interpretive, but you want to build connections between the environment, whatever you're talking about, whether it's environment, the piece of land that you're working with, the wildlife, you're building connections. And while the trappings are different, PowerPoint, social media, using Wi-Fi out on the trail, that's new, but the basic premise of meeting people where they're at and connecting them to the environment and giving them a positive experience, I don't think that's any different now than it was when I first started in the 90s.
How do you stay passionate? Because you really do seem like you still love your job.
Well, I've been very, very, very lucky. I mean, truly, truly lucky. Because if you talk to people about, hey, how's your job going? And what do people sometimes say? Oh, it's terrible. But if you dive deep on that and really find out what people have challenges with, and oftentimes it's their boss or their supervisor. And I've been very lucky in that all the places I've worked, I've had some fabulous supervisors who, in order to, quite frankly, kind of keep it fresh, I've had supervisors that have allowed me to kind of play to my strengths, but yet to still try things that are new and try things that are different, and to kind of follow my passions. And I'm on my third director right now, and I'm very lucky in that each one of them has really allowed me to do that. And also, I get a chance to do lots of different things. So, for instance, today I was doing a program for 4 to 6 year olds. Later on this week, I have a couple maple sugar programs for fourth graders and sixth graders. Next week, I have an adult education program I'm starting. I also have animal care. I'm doing trail ambassador training where I'm training them in different interpretive techniques when they meet people out on the trails. So I get a chance to do lots of different things. Every day is a little bit different, and I'm just really lucky. That's not to say I don't have my fair share of TPS reports that I have to work on. I know that's kind of a deep cut there for cultural reference for children of the 90s.
I think all of our listeners have seen The Office, or no, Office Space.
So I certainly have plenty of that. And there are people that'll come in here and they'll say, it's like, oh, you get to work here. Oh, that's so awesome. And you must be tiptoeing through the tulips. And I'm like, yep, every day. every day. So there are some days certainly that's like any job. It's a challenge. But I'm just really lucky that I work for an agency and an institution that allows me to do something that I feel is meaningful. And I get to kind of do things that I really like doing to bring to the public. So I'm just really lucky in that.
I think that one of your favorite things about me, Howard, if I may put words in your mouth, is my pedantry. And so I'm going to be a little pedantic here for a moment. You used the word lucky 5 times. And I would argue that you have not been lucky, that you have been fortunate. Whereas, and you're laughing, but lucky to me is random. And it just, you stumbled into a good situation. And fortunate, I think, is more a situation of, you've created something great for yourself and you have had good fortune, but it hasn't been totally random. And I think that's because, and this is leading up to a question here, I think that's because of your ability, the goodwill that you engender out there in the world. And it's, I had the opportunity to see this when I was at Ware Nature Center. I visited you in Wisconsin a couple of times, once to conduct an interpretation by design workshop at Ware Nature Center. And I got to see this passion that you have for this place. And another time was to see baseball and, visit the Fonzie statue in Milwaukee. So that was cool too. But, I think that your passion for this place and your longevity at this place has allowed you to accumulate a lot of responsibilities. And so, you're the lead point of contact on media inquiries. That's not necessarily something that every park naturalist is going to be doing, right? I know that you're involved in graphic design. I want to get into that a little bit later, but you've accumulated a lot of responsibilities. You've engendered this goodwill. You convey that for this place. When I think about the difference between, being the media contact versus, conducting a tour for fourth graders or conducting an activity, there on site, that sort of thing. Can you approach those the same way, or do you have to, think differently about mass audiences compared to a smaller audience right there on site? Can your passion shine through in a 30-second news bite?
I really feel that the interpretive skills that I've picked up and that I've developed and that I, quite frankly, learned through NAI, believe it or not, the interpretive approach I feel is really applicable to so many different areas, because you're talking about building connections and building emotional resonance with your audience, and that's not, while the eaches are different whether you're talking fourth graders or on television, it's still basically the same. What's your theme? What's your bottom line up front? What is the big so what? What connects a thing to an idea? What connects a tangible to an intangible? So going back to your question, I realized that when I have fourth graders, I might have them here for 2 hours. But on television, I got 30 seconds, and that's okay because it's actually harder to be more brief and concise and get to the point in 30 seconds. But I think the approach of meeting people where they're at and building those emotional connections are really, quite frankly, the same.
I just have to go back to the lucky versus fortunate because Paul, you do have all green on, and we are recording this on St. Patty's Day. So it might just be, the luck of the Irish.
I have more than one shamrock on my person at right now. I am wearing my Patty's Irish Pub shirt from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I've got my Phillies spring training green cap on. So yeah, maybe
So don't give Howard a hard time for saying luck. It's kind of like hard not to do.
maybe I should be talking about the fortune of the Irish today.
That's great.
I don't know if this is a combination of lucky or fortunate, but if can I share with you kind of like my an origin story?
That's exactly what I wanted to know.
So I worked for the Wisconsin DNR, and it was a great job. It was a great job, but it was seasonal and it was part-time. I was looking for a full-time job, and I sent out resumes all over the country because I remember when I was in college, the instructor saying, send out stuff all over the country. And for that first job, doesn't matter where it is, go take it. Well, in 1994, the National NAI Conference was in Cleveland. The first national conference was in Cleveland. And I went down there and I made it a point that I was going to extend myself and God darn it, maybe I'll be able to get a job here. So I took my resume and I made it a point that I was going to like glad hand and I was going to meet people and introduce myself. And I went into a concurrent session and I don't even remember what the concurrent session was. And a guy sat down next to me and I said, hi, I'm Howard Aprill, Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. And he introduced himself and he turns out he worked in Alaska. And I said, tell me about that. And he proceeded to tell me about that. And I said, that just sounds like the greatest job in the world. How do I get a job like that? And he said, oh, and he took out a card and he wrote his name on it. He says, this is the person this is me. And this is the person that you want to call. Tell him you talk to me. And I can't guarantee anything, but you never know. I was shocked. So I wound up calling that person in Alaska. And to make a long story short, this is the short version. I was offered that job in Alaska. I worked in Alaska for a season, and I really attribute me working at Denali National Park and in Alaska with something that set me different, that kind of set me apart, that allowed me to help get this job that I've been able to be at for close to 30 years. So I guess the moral of the story is that if you extend yourself, if you're open to meeting new people, and don't expect anything in return, just meeting new people and talking to them, being open, you never know. You literally never know where that might go. And I am truly fortunate as a result of that chance random meeting at NAI 1994 in Cleveland, Ohio. And I never forgot that.
That's cool.
It's not just your current job that you've been in so long. When I look at your CV, I mean, most of the things you've done in your life really have a lot of legs. I mean, you have just stuck with things for a very long time. Is that a skill that you kind of built, or is that something you think is just in you?
I think that I've been very fortunate. I've been able
This is
to
great. This is the best.
Yeah, I spent 24 years in the United States Army and Army Reserve. I've been on the board of directors of the Milwaukee Area Land Conservancy for over 20 plus years. I've been at Ware Nature Center for going on 30 years. I've had the opportunity to get into do different things that have been in my mind that are very meaningful. And also my role models kind of did that too. My dad worked as a public social worker for 30 plus years. My granddad, Grandpa Bert, very involved in NAI and its predecessors. He worked for the Akron Metro Parks for many, many years. My Uncle Mark from the park, retired from the Huron-Clinton Metro Parks in Detroit. He worked for their agency for 33 years. So I guess it's kind of a family thing. You get into something worthwhile and meaningful and you stick with it.
Would you like to expound for the listener on who Papa Bert and Mark in the Park are? You do come from a long lineage of interpretation heroes.
It is interesting. I'm a third generation interpreter. So I'm just blown away by that. So my grandfather, Grandpa Bert Sabo, he served in World War II. And like many folks of his generation, he came home and he actually had a degree in agriculture. And he came home, got married, and started a family real quick, and was a farm manager for many years. And then they were looking for a naturalist for the Akron Metro Parks. And the story is he went in for an interview, and they said, "Well, when can you start?" It was Mr. Wagner. He was the park superintendent at the time. He said, "When can you start, Bert?" And he says, it was raining. He says, "I got my raincoat and my boots in the car. I'll start right now." And that's kind of entered family lore. And he was with them for many, many years. And of course, he had a son, my mom, and and a son, Uncle Mark, and he got a degree from Ohio State in interpretation. So I had good role models. I had good role models. I remember as a little kid going out birding with Grandpa Bert, and he was like a avian savant, and he has binoculars, and he's like, blackbirdian warbler, uh, magnolia warbler, and he's just like checking them off, and I'm like, holy cow, I want to be like Grandpa Bert someday. And I'm not quite the birder that he was, but as far as his idea of doing something meaningful in interpretation, I hope I made him proud.
Do you think your dedication, devotion, your stick-to-itiveness also explains how a person could be a fan of a baseball team that has never won the World Series for your whole life?
Come on, we can't bring it back to baseball.
Sorry.
Different podcast.
Okay. Oh, wait a minute.
All right, here we go.
It up, Caputo.
Well, we can talk about the one career that never did pan out for you, that you abandoned, which was your acting career. Very important to note that before Howard was an interpreter, before he worked for the DNR, Howard was the co-star of the movie Major League with Charlie Sheen. And when I say co-star, what I mean is an extra during a scene that was filmed at Milwaukee County Stadium. And there's a moment, there's a time frame where you can actually scroll to in this movie, and you can see Howard right there on the movie co-starring with Charlie Sheen.
Well, I did not see that on the resume, but
yeah, what gives?
What gives? Because I'm kind of in awe now. Like, I wish I had been prepared to know who I was actually going to be on a podcast.
Well, this gets even better. Not only was I in a clip that appears in the movie, and for those of you at home that are pausing right now, it's the scene where it's like ball 4, ball 8, ball 12. Those of you that have seen it, you'll get that. And I'm the beer vendor behind home plate, and it was shot at like 7:30 in the morning, which is kind of interesting. So I tried out to be a baseball player. There's a call for extras, and I thought I just finished playing baseball in high school. And I thought, well, hey, I'll go try out. And of course, I show up that morning, and literally there's 1,000 guys there, and I'm standing in line getting ready to sign in, and these guys clearly look like they're ball players. And I said to one guy, he's like, "Hey, you look like you're a ball player." "Yeah, I was in AA for a bunch of years, and they fucking cut me." And I'm like, AA? So 1,000 guys tried out. I didn't get selected. Funny that. But I put in a card to be an extra. They called me a couple weeks later saying, "Hey, we need you to come down and be a beer vendor." And I was like, okay. So I showed up at 5:00 in the morning. They got me into a beer vendor outfit, did the thing. And then afterwards, they said, "Okay, craft services." And I said, "What's craft services?" Someone said, "They're going to feed you idiot." And I'm like, oh, okay. So I go on down below the stadium, and I go through the line, and who is sitting there eating lunch but Charlie Sheen? And I'm thinking, well, this is an opportunity to get every day. So I go up to him. I don't know what to say to him. I'm 18 years old. So I go up, "Is the seat taken?" And on the inside, I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. But what else am I going to say? So he kind of pointed, and I sat down, and I tried to have a conversation with Charlie Sheen. And at least he didn't say much, but he didn't tell me to get lost. So I can say, technically, I had lunch with Charlie Sheen.
I do love that. You knew I was going to bring that up too, Howard, so I appreciate you rolling with it. I mentioned earlier that you have an interest in graphic design. You had me back in the days when I was conducting my interpretation by design, graphic design for interpreters workshop. You had me, and in fact, several times, twice I came out to Ware Nature Center, and we did work baseball into it. We got to some baseball games while we were there. But most importantly, you felt that it was important for the folks on your staff to have the ability to talk about graphic design and understanding of visual communication, even though your job has been largely personal interpretation, not non-personal interpretation. that was important to you. And one of my favorite Howard stories is the time that I got a voicemail that was 30 seconds of Howard laughing hysterically, and then it ended with him saying, "You'll see it in the mail." And like a week later, I got a piece of mail that had like a famously bad piece of graphic design on it. You could tell this was before, I don't know, like scanning or the internet were things, really.
It was terrible. Yeah, it was it was it was so
There were
bad it was good. Yeah.
starbursts and type on a curve and drop shadows, and yeah, it was chaos. But I am most interested in where your interest in design came from, and then why you felt it was important for folks who that is not necessarily their job. They're not graphic designers, but why you felt it was important for the staff at Ware Nature Center to have that training in visual communication.
Paul, that's a great example of the importance of lifelong learning. When I was in college and taking my classes, the concept of graphic design or layout or doing a brochure or even a flyer, I never had an intro to that. So suddenly I'm at this job here at Ware Nature Center where just in the course of doing my job, it would be handy to be able to do a flyer or a poster, a handout of some kind, even something like as varied from a public flyer to like a scavenger hunt for kids. And I just kind of felt at a disadvantage. I'm like, I'm trying to do this, but I really don't have any formal training in that. And I said, yeah, my training is as a naturalist, but gall darn it, I don't want to look like an idiot on this. And it's kind of like, how you can kind of, even if you're not an expert, you can sometimes tell something is not right, something is off. You can tell, well, that's a fabulous brochure or that's not a good brochure. And you don't need a lot of training to kind of know that. It certainly helps. And now that you've trained me, Paul, I can't I can't turn it off, but that's a whole other story.
You can't
So I
unlearn
just,
it. You can't
yeah,
stop
you
seeing
can't.
Comic Sans.
You cannot, and Comic Sans, of course, is everywhere. But I felt at a complete disadvantage. And this is back when, believe it or not, we would use actual clip art where I would actually take a scissors and go and clip out the piece of artwork that I wanted to put onto the poster. And I said, there has to be a better way of doing this. And then that's when you came out with your book, co-authored with Shea Lewis and Lisa Brochu. And here's a guy that understands the niche predicament that I am in. And that's when I contacted you and said, hey, Paul, is there any way you can help us out with this? And not just that I had an understanding of it, but everyone had an understanding. Not that everyone necessarily is going to be doing posters, but that you know what to ask when talking with a graphic designer. You can explain what you're shooting for, and you understand kind of the basics of what's good and what's not. It's a very, very handy skill, and I'm really surprised at how much I've used that in the course of my job. Those graphic design skills that where I learned in NAI. I'm not an expert, but as I tell my colleagues, I know just enough to be dangerous.
Howard, have you seen any trends either with visitors behavior, visitor engagement, and or just the field of interpretation?
I would say, and this is my completely unscientific observation.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not a sociologist. I'm not a PhD in human development and learning. But in my opinion, it seems that you have, when you're dealing with the public, when you're interacting with the public, I should say, when you're interacting with the public, interacting with your audience, in my opinion, I feel as though you have less time to get to the point. It's more the bluff, bottom line up front. And it seems that people are super busy. And also, I have had it where I've been doing programs and people will whip out their phones in the middle of the program. Now don't get me wrong, now I sound like an old man. Back in my day, but really the thought of when I'm face to face, eye to eye, making eye contact, the idea of whipping out a phone and checking my texts while talking to someone, I just have a hard time with that. But I remind myself it's about meeting people where they're at.
Right.
Meeting people where they're at. And I just kind of, and when I'm having a bad day and if someone is kind of jerky to me, and I've had plenty of stories. When I wrote my book, Paul, which I want you to edit, by the way. I
I
have
want
plenty
to
of
write the foreword about people being jerks to Howard.
there are lots of creative ways that people have been jerky, and I always tell myself, don't take it personal.
Yeah.
Don't take it personal, because especially with the phones, as I now it's turning into a rant, but when people whip out their phones and they start doing something, I don't take it personal. It's just the way things are now, and I just try and work around it and get to the point quicker.
So you don't
Yeah.
ask people to keep them away. We've had lots of discussions on Interp Talks about this and whether, you ask people to maybe refrain from that, but you don't know if they're looking something up, right? To like get more information or whatever. And
Yeah, yeah. I got to tell you, that just reminded me of something. So before any program, I always ask people to put their phones on vibrate. And I say, obviously, if it's important, take it. No problem. I get it. It's just step out, take it. But there was one time I was doing a program and the phone rang and the guy said, "Oh, this is really important. I gotta take this." I'm like, "Wow, he said it's really important. So it must
In
be
that
really
voice, no
important."
less.
So I kind of thought the conversation, he didn't step out of the room. I kind of thought the conversation would go like this: prepping for surgery. I'm on my way. That is not how the conversation went. It went more like this: Aaron Rodgers is terrible. They should get rid of that guy. Blah, 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 blah. They switched from a 4-3 defense to a 3-4 to a 4-3 defense. What are they thinking? And I was just like, really? This was the emergency. I'm doing for the folks at home, I'm doing air quotes. This is the emergency. So that's probably the most egregious, and that of course will be in the book that you edit, Paul. But it's and I try not get mad about that, but it makes it phones and social media obviously makes it more of a challenge. The other thing that how things have changed with social media is that as a agency, as a team, we have to make sure that we're all on the same sheet of music. Like if there's a policy, we got to make sure that everyone understands the policy and everyone is saying the same thing. And that's just out of respect to the public, because if one person is off, then suddenly it's magnified on social media. And here's another example. Years ago, this is the previous director, we had a huge rainstorm. Trees were down all over the place. It was a mess. And we put in a work order for the forestry crew to come out and clear it out. But they were looking at days of tree clearance. So we put up some out on one of our trails. We put up some orange cones, some yellow tape, and we put up a sign playing "Trail closed, please don't go through." And then my boss was putting out some pylons, and there was a lady that was jogging, and she's like, "Hey, I'm going through." And the boss very politely said, "Hey, it's really dangerous. It's washed out. Trees are down." And she's like, "Going through anyway." And the boss is like, "You really shouldn't go through there." "But you're telling me that I can't go through. You're infringing on my civil rights. I'm a taxpayer." So that jogger proceeded to go right on through under the yellow tape, past the orange pylons, past the sign. And within an hour or two, guess who was on Facebook talking about how Ware Nature Center was the worst place in the world? So that's an example of how social media has changed. 20 years ago, it would have been one disgruntled person who would have, when they're at a cocktail party, saying, "There's a jerky lady at Ware Nature Center." But now it's on Facebook and literally like everyone can see it. And that is a challenge that did not exist when I first started in the field.
I didn't expect this. I knew I was going to enjoy this interview going in, but I did not expect that my favorite thing about it was going to be Howard's voices, the imitations of supervisors and visitors and students.
do us now.
Yeah,
Howard,
do Heather, do Heather. Howard, Heather mentioned earlier in the podcast that you have experience in the military, a long career since retired. I am curious how your experience in the military, some of which overlapped with your current position at Ware Nature Center. Obviously, they're very different worlds. How does the military experience inform the time that you've had as an interpreter at a nature center?
I actually had the honor of doing 24 years in the Army and Army Reserve, both before I became an interpreter and then during my time as an interpreter. And a lot of people they kind of feel it's like, what? Those are completely different. And they are very different. But I really firmly believe that the skill set that I learned in the military, believe it or not, helped me and has helped me, continues to help me in my role as an interpreter. And I feel that my communication and interpretive skills as an interpreter have helped me in my military career. And let me give you just a very brief example of that. So one of the things with the military is that, it's about being organized and having a vision. This is where you start, this is where the end goal is. And you want to have redundancy and backup and checklists. And that has helped out very well in my role as an interpreter. So, for instance, in both 2003, I deployed to Iraq. In 2014, I deployed to Afghanistan. And one of them came up pretty quick. But I'm very pleased to say, I had most of my stuff written down in binders. I know, I'm sure I'm old-fashioned binders, you take them off the shelf. So when I got deployed to Iraq, I was able to literally take the binder off the shelf, show it to my coworkers. These are the things that I do. These are the programs that I do. These are the outlines of the programs I do. And I could literally hand it off to the next person. So that organization has helped me as an interpreter. And as an interpreter, I have used the skill set of, trying to build connections. And I know that the military has a certain way of doing things, but when I was a military advisor in Afghanistan, I was an advisor to the Afghan border police. I was on a team of advisors, and there were the eaches that we were concerned about. We were worried about fuel and inventories and capabilities and different missions they were running. But one of the things that I really tried to instill in my Afghan counterparts was trying to explain and instill why things were important. Because you can teach someone the eaches, but it's much more compelling if you understand why and to build an actual connection to the reason behind that. So I felt that as an interpreter, it helped make me a better advisor to my Afghan counterparts while I was over there. And also with my own soldiers, explaining why it's important to do something, not just fill those sandbags, but hey, it's really important we fill those sandbags because we might get a mortar attack and those sandbags will keep us alive and we all want to go home to our families. So, which is actually a true story, by the way. So I really, they're two different worlds, but I feel that both have helped the other. And one of the reasons that I served in both is I feel there are multiple things that are worthy of serving. I wanted to serve my country in uniform, and I also wanted to be a naturalist. And fortunately, I was able to do both.
Howard, first of all, I wish everyone could see you, because I think if they thought of you as a military person versus your lovely beard and long curly hair, it just is very different. But it's been really nice getting to know you even more. I mean, we've spent a little bit of time together at a national conference, but it's been really fabulous. I can see why Paul likes you so much. It's been a really nice it's been a really nice 45 minutes chatting with you.
It was truly my pleasure. Thank you so much. Thanks to both of you, and thanks to NAI, and thanks for doing this and helping people meet the tremendous diversity and the many different things that people do in this amazing field.
We didn't even get to tell the story about how we dressed up as mattresses and raced on the field at a Beloit Snappers game.
You left me in the dust. You ran quite fast, and not just running fast, but running while wearing a mattress. Impressive.
Howard, that was at the height of my running career there. So it's there's no shame in losing as bad as you did to me in the Beloit Mattress Company Beloit mattress race at the Snappers game. Howard, this has been great. Thank you so much. And interpreters, that's what's up.
What's up?